Hi, I'm Max Walker&Williams, and today I am creating my first book review. Thanks ever so much to Stephen Jones and Ben Bacon for recommending The Four. So, The Four is the hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, a book written by Scott Galloway. Produced by Penguin Books. It is available on Audible. On the back it says that it's £9.99, £10 British. I got it for about £3.50 on Amazon, so it depends whether you buy brand new or second hand. It's a New York Times bestseller, and apparently, according to the front, a bareback ride upon the four horses of the economic apocalypse contains more insights and provocative ideas than Amazon has Boeing's 767s, and that's by Wired magazine. On the back, when it comes to the digital age, Scott Galloway is Christopher Hitchens with an MBA, namely a brainy and fearless provocateur. That's by Vanity Fair. For all that's been written about Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google over the last 2 decades, no one has captured their power and staggering success as insightfully as Scott Galloway. Instead of buying the myths these companies broadcast, Galloway asks fundamental questions. How did the four infiltrate our lives so completely that they're almost impossible to avoid? Why does the stock market forgive them for the sins that would destroy other firms? And as they race to become the world's first $1 trillion company, can anyone challenge them? Whether you want to compete with them, do business with them, or simply live in the world they dominate, you need to understand the four. Sorry about my mobile phone, I forgot to turn it off, schoolboy error. So just before we get into it, I'm going to give you a bit of structure. If you intend to read the book, the first couple of minutes is just going to be a general overview of the book, what I thought of it, and a little bit about the author. Then I'm going to go into a bit more detail. So if you do intend to read the book and you don't want any spoilers, I recommend watching the first couple of minutes before we get into the nitty-gritty. If you're too busy to read the book, then I recommend you watch the whole thing, and you won't need to. So the past, the present, and the future of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. So Scott Galloway calls the four companies the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And as I say, the book is about the past of each of the companies, so the history, how they started, very brief. The present, where they currently sit, and there's some really interesting facts which I'm going to give you in a second. And the future of each of the companies, so what Scott thinks the future holds for the businesses, both medium and long term. Interestingly, Apple has more cash in the bank. So bear in mind, this isn't value, this is raw, actual physical cash in the bank, than the market cap, that's the value of Boeing, Nike, and Airbus put together. So Nike company, huge, we think of it as a massive business. Airbus, obviously huge, Boeing, huge. Apple has more cash than they're worth combined. Apple has more cash in the bank than the total value of all of the Russian stock market. And it also has more cash than the gross domestic product of Denmark, the annual gross product of the entire country of Denmark. So it kind of gives you an idea of the size and profitability of Apple. And profitability is a big thing with Apple, and we'll come back to that. Amazon is worth double Walmart, Tiffany & Co., Coach, Target, Tesco's, Gap, and many other billion-dollar companies combined. More than double. So every one of those companies is huge. If I said to you I own Walmart, big deal. Tiffany & Co., Coach, Tesco's, Target, Gap. Amazon has a market cap at the time of writing of $748 billion US. Facebook's return on human capital is absolutely massive. It's one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest in the world. What do I mean by human capital, return on human capital? So how much does the company earn per number of employees it has? So if you have a company that has 10 employees and you earn £10, you've earned £1 per employee. So your employee capital is £1. For example, to give you some sort of comparison, General Motors has 118,000 employees and turns over £285,000 per year per employee. Dollars, sorry, not pounds. Facebook has 25,000 employees and turns over $21 million per year per employee. So General Motors, 118,000 employees, $285,000 a year. Facebook, 25,000 employees, turns over $21 million per year per employee. Google has a market cap of $773 billion at the time of writing, more than Comcast, $170 billion, Disney, $169 billion, Time Warner, $72 billion, 20th Century Fox, $65 billion, Sony, $58 billion, Viacom, $14 billion, and News Corp, $10 billion combined. So each of these companies, if you said News Corp, 10 billion, you forget these are billions. News Corp's worth 10 billion. You add all of them together, still not worth as much as Google's market cap. It's absolutely insane. So the book isn't what I expected. I've read a lot of business books in my time, and most of them, like this one, just talk about, they're almost like a PR book for the companies themselves. So these third-party guys, generally the authors of these types of books, sort of like historical books about companies and biographical books about companies, are generally quite neutral. They write about the history, quite factual. This is how it started, and they're quite flattering of the businesses and the subjects that they talk about. This, I have to say, is a very, very different book, and it's not what I expected. For a start, Scott Galloway, according to Google, has a personal net worth of $30 million. He's a serial entrepreneur. He started loads of big businesses, some of which have succeeded fantastically, some of which have failed, by his own admission in the book, have failed catastrophically. He says that he's learned a lot from it. He's dead honest. He talks about himself. He talks about his family. It made me laugh. It's funny in parts, actually laugh out loud funny. And he's critical of the companies. He's really, really honest. And he's critical of the companies. And he says where they get it right. And he says where they get it absolutely, in his opinion, wrong. And that's really refreshing, because most books you read like this, as I say, are very neutral, very bland, very matter of fact. But this book is definitely different and stands out. Just for starters, he swears all the way through it. I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying it's cool, but it's a USP. It's a differentiation. I haven't read a book in a long, long time where, particularly a business type book, where the author swears all the way through it, and is so self-critical as well. He's very self-aware and self-critical, very emotionally intelligent. So let me break down the book for you. The first part of the book introduces the four different companies, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google. Then it expands on the four, so it talks about the good, the bad, and the ugly, world domination, how Amazon in particular has sort of swallowed up or destroyed, to put it bluntly, according to Scott Galloway, other smaller businesses, and the good they do too. So some of the good that they do. Second part of the book talks about how someone might replace one of the four or be the fifth. And that's really interesting, because Scott clearly knows what he's talking about. I've put here, he's a professor at New York's University Stern School of Business, serial entrepreneur, 30 million, according to Google, he's got a net worth of 30 million. On the back of the book about the author, it also says that he has YouTube views of the tens of millions. Now, he has got his own YouTube channel. You can just search Scott Galloway on YouTube. I'll put a link to his channel in the description below. And it does say in the book that he's got tens of millions of views. If you look on his channel and then click about and go to the bottom, he's got 1.4 million views, so only 200,000 views more than me, and my channel's only been going for 8 months. So I don't completely believe the book when it says he's got tens of millions of views. However, it could mean that he could be on other people's channels, in interviews and that sort of thing, and across the whole of YouTube, his face has got tens of millions of views, which I absolutely believe. But it's a little bit naughty, just a side point, his own channel, 1.4 million views. Kind of irrelevant anyway, because the guy's a professor with an MBA and got and a net worth of $30 million, according to Google. So ways and above me. So the first part, okay, and then he goes on to talk about, which, as I was saying, is really interesting, how to be the fourth, how to knock one of the four off their pedestal, or how to be the fifth company, and what that takes, and we'll get into that in the second part of this book review. I've broken things down. As you can see, I always read books and make notes at the back. I've got copious notes on the back pages there where I jot things down, and I also put these little post-it notes in for my quick reference. Page 179, great business, think, remove, friction, not service. So what he means by that, Scott Galloway, he says, most people, when they're thinking of starting a business, they think of what they can create. I want to be the next Uber, or I'm going to create something. And it's actually really, really hard to do, which is why few people do it. Successfully anyway. And what he said people should actually be doing is not reinventing the wheel, but looking at something that already exists and removing friction. So the example he uses is Uber. He says ordering a taxi on the phone or on the internet is friction. Paying, making sure you have cash on you for the taxi ride, or having to stop at a cash point is friction. If you remove ordering a taxi on the internet, or particularly by telephone, and you remove paying, what have you got? You've got an app on your phone, Uber. So think of things that already exist, things you have to do, driving and picking up a takeaway. That's friction. Uber Eats. So look at things that already exist, that are hard to do or could be easier, and that's how you create a really successful company. He has a checklist of 8 points later on in the book, but I'll get to that in a second, as I said. And we'll go through all 8 points that he brings up to be the next horseman of the apocalypse, or to be the fifth, to be the latest. My favorite quote in the book has got to be, "It's never been a better time to be exceptional or a worse time to be average." That quote's on page 177. So what he means by that is that in the same way that he talks about the high street and how people say that the internet is killing the high street, and he actually challenges that thought and says the internet isn't killing the high street at all. The internet, although massive, still only accounts for 35% of all retail sales across the world. So a good majority and the lion's share of shopping is still happening person to person physically on the high street. He seems to think what is actually killing the high street is the death of the middle class. And I have to say, I'm inclined to agree with him. I've talked a long time about how the middle class is getting squeezed, and it's pretty obvious when you think about it. If you look at things are becoming more and more polarized and becoming more and more stark. If you look at the higher end and the absolute entry level, you'll see they're booming, but it's the middle that's getting squeezed, and that applies to sort of across the board every industry. If you look at British Airways first class, has never been busier, and availability has never been fewer and far between. EasyJet and the low airline, low budget sort of guys, they have never been busier. It's the people in the middle that are struggling. Like your Virgins and so on and so forth. If you look at supermarkets in the UK, so Lidl, Aldi are absolutely flying. We all know that. They're the sort of entry level sort of guys, and the pound shops and all that sort of stuff are absolutely flying. The top end, Harrods, never reported to higher profits. Fortnum & Mason never reported to higher profits. It's the guys in the middle that are getting squeezed. Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, all those guys are really, really struggling, and the Aldis and the Lidls and the Harrods and the Fortnum & Masons are absolutely flying. So it's the polars, and it's the middle bit that's getting absolutely squeezed. You look at your Premier hotels, you know, the business I'm in. Premier Inn, Travelodge, flying. 5-star, super luxury, flying. Middle bits, closing left, right, and rhubarb. So it's across every industry, and it's because the middle class is getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Why that's happening is a whole other video on YouTube, and one I will be making shortly. And if you'd like to see that video, please hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be notified when your video is ready to watch. So Scott goes on to say that actually, if anything, the internet is turning things full circle back into the old ways. What's he mean? Well, he goes on to say that Apple has opened 500 stores at the time of writing across 18 countries. Amazon is building and renting and buying millions and millions of square feet of warehouse space, just like the factories in the Industrial Revolution here in the UK and a little bit less so in America, but certainly in Europe, the Industrial Revolution, factories were going up left, right and centre, and Amazon is buying warehouses and developing them out millions and millions and millions of square feet. And now Amazon's talking about having and trialing in America its first physical shop, retail, where you can actually go in, pick stuff up, walk out, there's no tills, it just knows what you've taken and it charges you accordingly with your Amazon account, face recognition, Brave New World sort of stuff. So it's, and that's an example of how I find the book really, really interesting. It challenges your perceived knowledge and givens, that it's a given that the internet's killing the high street. It's a given that these 4 companies are too big to fail. And Scott actually challenges all of those misconceptions and does so really, really well. The last section of the book then goes on to talk about how it's careers advice, effectively. It's how you can achieve success by climbing the career ladder in one of the 4 businesses or businesses very similar to them, and also how you can compete. So if you wanted to start your own business, Scott gives you sort of tips and advice from having done that himself very successfully, referring back to that $30 million net worth according to Google. And he talks about how to succeed as an employee in those businesses if that's the way you're inclined, but also how to potentially succeed if you're an entrepreneur. Okay guys, so that's kind of a overall roundup of the book. I hope you've enjoyed that part of it. I'm going to be giving each of the books that I review 2 review scores. The first one is just as a general business book across the spectrum of all the different sort of subgenres of business book. And the second review score is going to be a score of the book in its own niche genre. So, as an overall business book, I give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's really, really good. It's a really easy read, which is important. And it makes you laugh out loud, as I said before, but it's also really, really informative and factual, and it's got some real good nuggets of interesting, mind-blowing facts. And it challenges the way you think, which I personally really, really like, and it's a page turner. As a book that is a biography of businesses, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. I can't think how this could be much better, but I can't give it a 10 because there's bound to be something that either already has been written or will be written that's better. So that's the only reason I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10. So for its niche sort of subcategory business book of biography, 9.5 out of 10. As an overall business book, 8 out of 10. So we're now going to go into the second part of the book review where we get a bit more into the nitty-gritty of the book. Particularly, I really want to dig into the one of the most important sections for us as people who want to take something away from the book is for starting on page 177. You have a list of 8 things that, according to Scott Galloway, your product has to be if you want to be one of the 4 or the 5th horseman in this book and be a huge company. So number 1, your product has to have differentiation. So product differentiation, what does he mean by that? He basically means USP, unique selling point. A mattress, and the example he uses, I don't know if you've seen these guys are massive in America. They've come over to the UK and I've seen the adverts on TV myself. Maybe you have too. They're a mattress in a box. So you order the mattress, you say how soft or firm you want it, it arrives in a little box, you open it and it sort of unfurls in your house and then puffs up and spreads out and it's a mattress in a box. Now, a bit of a novelty, sure. Are they comfortable? I don't know. I've never slept on one. I doubt they're as comfortable as the very expensive mattresses that wouldn't fit in a box that we have in the hotels. But nonetheless, very successful business, and its USP is that you order it online and it comes in a small box. You open it and the whole thing puffs out. Fun to watch, I guess. So you have to have, whether it's a novelty or not, you have to have differentiation in your product. Visionary capital. Now, this is something that I would have never thought of in a million years. I've got to be honest. I never would have thought of this. If somebody said to me, Max, what do you need to have a successful company? A global big, not just your local chip shop or whatever, but a really, really global successful business. I never would have said visionary capital, but of course, he's absolutely right. What do you mean by visionary capital? Cheap cash. Why do you need cheap cash? Because if you're going to grow to any scale, even if you have a really successful product, you're still going to need money and you're going to need visionary capital. So that might mean that you get an investment of X hundred millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, $1 million, pounds, whatever, and not have to make any payments for a period of time through a venture capitalist. Low interest rates so that you can be the cheapest to market and bully other people out, a bit like Amazon did. So they were just so much cheaper because they didn't have store costs, they didn't have rent, they didn't have mortgages, they didn't have rates to pay, which is very controversial, particularly here in the UK with the high street apparently being the victim of the internet and the internet sales like Amazon. They didn't have all these huge costs, so they were able to offer a better product at a cheaper price. And visionary capital allowed them to do that. Whereas if you borrow money, yourself, if you go and borrow £1 million off the high street bank and you've got to pay back £10,000 a month, well then your business has got to make money and make money quick. And from day one, you've got to charge big bucks to repay that, just to service that loan. Whereas if the bank said there's £1 million and you don't have to pay anything for the first 3 years, and actually at the end of the 3 years we might give you another 10 million or 100 million, well, it makes a massive difference to how much you can grow and how quickly you can grow and the markets that you can get into. So a really, really important point. I have to be honest, I would have missed that. Global reach. So it's no good. You can't be a fish and chip shop because people in America can't order the fish and chips. People in Taiwan can't order your fish and chips. So it's got to be something that can reach globally. It's not always like, for example, with Uber, they're not a tech company, and they are a tech company, of course, but they're not in the sense that they have a physical product. You have to be physically stood there. You have to have the car physically come and pick you up and take you somewhere. So it doesn't have to be, but technology is obviously the go-to for global reach because everybody can download Angry Birds. And actually, I'll find a really good example for you that Scott talks about technology. Here you go. So he put, technology is reaching people faster and faster. It took 75 years for the telephone to reach 50 million people. So it took 75 years for the telephone to reach 50 million people. So that's for 50 million people to have a telephone in their house. It took 75 years. It took TV 13 years to reach 50 million people. It took the internet 4 years to reach 50 million people. And Angry Birds was downloaded 50 million times in 35 days. So that's a really good example of how you can grow quick. 50 million people in 35 days, telephone 75 years. So that's just another great example of how he gets you thinking and uses great examples to get his point across. Likeability. So likeability is not just what it says on the tin, but it's also trust. And what Scott says is that you might say, and a lot of people do, that Google is an evil empire and they're listening to us and this, that, and the other. But when it actually comes down to it, you still use them. So you must trust them and you must like them. If you didn't, you wouldn't use them. They're that, it's that simple. Or you don't dislike them enough to not use them, should we say. So their products are so good. You like the iPhone so much. You like having Alexa and the convenience of having that music and that sort of thing in your home more than you're bothered about Alexa listening to what you're saying, if she is at all. Google, loads of people say that Google's an evil empire. The guys with multi-mohawks that I talk about all the time in my crypto videos, they're always slagging Google off. Google's an evil empire, blah, blah, blah. But when you Google something, how many times have you questioned it? How many times have you questioned Google? So if you Google, what time is it in Australia? And it comes up, bosh, straight away, there's the time. How many times have you fact-checked Google? Have you second-guessed it? I'd argue never, because I haven't. So you can say what you like about Google's intentions, them removing their saying don't be evil and all that stuff. But when it actually comes down to it, subconsciously and in your heart, you trust them. You must do, otherwise you'd second guess everything. You wouldn't use them in the first place. And if you did use them, then you'd fact check everything that you search, but you don't. Why? Because you trust Google implicitly. It's almost like a government in its own right, as much as you trust those guys. So likability is that you have to be able to, as a company, be so liked that you can make terrible mistakes in business and everyone forgives you. Amazon hoarding everyone's data and also Facebook. I mean, Christ, Facebook's famous. It's been a big controversy. It's in the newspapers. Facebook are following us. They're tracking us. They're doing this. They're hoarding the data when they're saying they're not, and all this and that and the other. They didn't lose any noticeable Facebook Facebook users. So 1 in 5 people in the world log in to Facebook every 24 hours. 1 in 5 people in the world on planet Earth log into Facebook every 24 hours, within 24 hours. So regular users, and there wasn't a noticeable drop in people when it became apparent that it's true that they are following us, they're tracking all our information and that sort of thing. Why? Because we like the service more than we feel the harm. So that's really important. Vertical integration, being able to make what you do more profitable and more seamless, more efficient by vertical integration. What is vertical integration? So it's Amazon owning the warehouse where they store the stuff. It's Amazon then owning the trucking company that delivers the products to the end user. And it's Google owning the phone, owning the software on the phone, owning the search engine, and then owning the company that prints the book that it sends. So it's about making profit on every step of the journey. So rather than being, the manufacturer of a chair, making his profit and selling it to a retailer, and then them selling it to the end user, and then making a profit, it's you being the manufacturer, being the distributor, being the retailer, and so on and so forth. So it's about how many rings on the ladder you can own. If you can own all of them, you earn profit on every step of that ring, and that multiplies your profit across. So, Google own the factory in China that make the phone. They own the company that makes the software that goes on the phone. They own the aeroplanes that fly the phones over. They own the lorries that deliver the phones, and so on and so forth. They own the stores that then sell the phone, and so on and so forth. So if you can vertically integrate into your own industry, then you can make more and more profit, or You can keep the profit of what you do, and every time you gain more profit, you lower your price, killing the competition. AI, so being able to have artificial intelligence in your business. So again, if you're an efficient chip shop, you can be very, very successful, relatively. You can have 10 chip shops, 50 chip shops, fine. But it'll always be, it won't be one of the 4, and it's not going to be the 5th either. The reason being is because you don't know where your customers have come from. You don't know when they're coming again. You can only garner so much research, and you only appeal to the people within a certain physical distance of each chip shop. AI means that things can get cheaper, and it's all about efficiency and bringing your prices down. Amazon would obviously be the obvious choice out of the 4, because we know about them having no people in their warehouses, or certainly fewer and fewer people, and the dream is to have no human interaction in their warehouses. So it's robots picking out what you order. It's a robot taking your order in the form of software. It's hardware and software at their warehouses, and then one day automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles, delivering the products, or drones delivering the products to you with no human interaction, from you ordering it to you opening the package in your home. So if you can apply artificial intelligence and robots and computers into your business, then your business has more chance of being cheaper, more efficient, and therefore killing the competition. So clearly, geography is really, really important, and you have to decide, if you're going to commit and make this business work, you have to decide where you're going to set it up. And that might mean a big, big decision, and it shows your commitment to the business. If you have a $1 million idea, a $1 billion idea, a $1 trillion idea for a tech startup, are you going to stay where you currently live in Skegness, or are you going to move to California to chase your dreams? And that's the decision that you have to make, according to Scott, if you're going to be one of the 4 or the 5th. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you found this book review informative. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below recommending another book that I should read that you'd like me to comment. I have got 2 more. Thank you very much to everybody that has been giving me recommendations on Instagram and on YouTube. I've got The Algebra of Happiness coming up, also by Scott Galloway, complete coincidence, and Chasing Cool, standing out in today's cluttered marketplace. Please hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and you will be notified when the next book review is ready for you to watch. Thanks ever so much for watching. Take care. See you soon.